Did you ever have one of those friends at school that was just quietly good at everything? You'd learn how to wheelie a bike or do a trick with a skipping rope and they'd just be a little bit better at it. And while other kids were dyeing their hair or getting piercings in an effort to stand out, they'd just develop a really cool sense of understated style that everyone found really attractive. Well, if that kid was a car, it'd be a Renault Zoe. While everyone else is frantically launching new electric cars, Renault is just quietly improving the Zoe so that it always stays one step ahead. It was one of the first electric cars and has gone on to be a bestseller. This is the latest version and it's better than ever with more performance, technology and a bigger battery. Combine that with low costs and it's enough to make those rivals gnash their teeth in frustration. So, is the updated Zoe capable of competing with the likes of Vauxhall's Corsa E, the Peugeot E208 and Volkswagen's A-Up? Well, before we answer that question, please do subscribe and come and visit us on Insta, Twitter and all the other social media platforms because indirectly, that's how I get paid. So the big news for the updated Zoe is the size of the battery. At 52 kilowatts, it's absolutely enormous for a car of this size. In fact, cars like the Mini Electric and the Honda E both have to cope with batteries in their 30s, and this one is slightly bigger than the battery in a Vauxhall Corsa E or a Peugeot E208. Now what that means is that the Zoe has a range of 245 miles. Now that's 3 miles less than an Audi e-tron that costs 3 times more. Does a small electric car like this really need that sort of range? Well, maybe not if you're only going to work and back every day and charge at night. But it could mean that people who live in towns and don't have a driveway could just charge their Zoe once a week, maybe when they do their weekly shop. And as a third of us in the UK don't have access to off-street parking, that could be pretty key in the take-up of electric cars. In fact, a lot of people seem to buy a car like the Zoe as a second car, and then they find it really practical day to day. So they like the smaller bills, the way it drives, and their second car suddenly becomes their primary vehicle. The other big factor, which puts some people off electric cars, is the price. Now, the new Zoe is about 26 grand, which is a lot for a small car. But if you put it on a monthly lease, it will be about £270 a month, or much less if you use a company salary sacrifice scheme, which takes the cost out of your pre-tax wages. If you want to learn more about that, then please check out our explainer on electrifying.com, because if you work out the maths properly, it does mean that you could have a car like this for less money per month than it takes to have a Clio. So if you're going to make the change from Clio to Zoe, what's it like? Well, it's pretty much like any other small hatchback really, which is good news. Here in the back, it's a tight squeeze for adults because this door is actually quite small and the headroom isn't great, but smaller kids will be fine and it's perfectly comparable to other hatchbacks of this size, so pretty average. Once inside, the seating position is a little bit more upright than I'm used to, or that's common in a car of this size, and there's no seat height adjuster, but saying that, you do get used to it. The technology is pretty easy to understand too. The traditional instruments have been replaced by a screen, sort of like you get in an Audi or Mercedes, and then there's this big screen that looks sort of like an iPad in the middle of the dashboard. It's a little bit like Tesla's touchscreen, and it works pretty well too, controlling the navigation, radio and charging functions. There's no Tesla-like fart machines or rainbow road graphics though. Boo. But there's the connectivity and charge points everyone expects these days, and being a Renault, it has all of the electronic safety devices that it needs to get a really good score on the Euro NCAP crash test. This is the more expensive 135 version, which is sort of the equivalent of a mid-sized petrol engine in terms of performance, and there's also a cheaper and slower 110 variant available. Now, obviously hatchback like the Zoe isn't really designed to be a performance or sports car, but it does feel remarkably perky to drive, especially around town and at slower speeds. But as with most electric cars, that punchiness does tail off as you go faster, and once you get to motorway speeds, well, the Zoe doesn't feel so perky. In fact, the top speed is not much higher than the speed limit. When it comes to slowing down, the Zoe now has a B mode. Now that will be familiar to people who've had a Nissan Leaf or a BMW i3 because it's essentially brake regen. It basically feels that you're changing down a gear in a conventional car when you lift your foot off the accelerator. It's a bit like the motor being switched back into a generator and dragging the car to a stop. So the energy that's usually wasted when you brake is being grabbed back and dumped back into the battery. Other than that, the Zoe pretty much drives the same way as a normal hatchback with an automatic gearbox. It's grippy and nimble, it's got fairly light steering, tight turning circle. It makes it easy to park and navigate through tight gaps. Eventually though, you will have to stop and charge it. It's pretty simple, and most owners will use a home, work or public point which can fill up the battery at anything between 3 and 22 kilowatts using an AC feed from the mains. Have you got no idea what AC and EV and kilowatts mean? Well, we can help, because you can check out the EV dictionary over on electrifying.com. The Zoe's big battery takes a while to get to 100% full though, just because it is pretty big. It will take about 9 hours on a standard home charger. That's fine if you're doing it overnight at home, but it isn't going to be much fun if you're doing a long journey. And that's why most electric cars also have the option to take a DC fast charge, so you can top up quickly when you're out and about. If you do want to do that with your Zoe, make sure that you order the top version, called GT line, and you tick the option box which adds rapid charge capability. It's a £750 extra, which is a bit of a surprise as most rivals have it included. And we think it's rather mean of Renault to make you pay extra for it. Well, I do anyway. If you do have it, the standard CCS socket will get you from 20 to 80% in 50 minutes. Other than making long journeys possible, it could also mean you could commute all week without needing to plug it in, and then you could get a rapid charge to last you for the next week while you're shopping or at the gym. So, the Zoe was a bit of a game changer when it was launched in 2012, and it still is today. Affordable, practical, and with a big enough range to make it viable for thousands more motorists. Here's the deal. The Renault Zoe might be familiar and it's been around for a few years, but it's a thoroughly up-to-date small car and probably the perfect introduction to the world of electrified motoring.